All right, guys. So let me ask you guys a question. If you woke up one day and you put a listing on MLS and literally get syndicated nowhere. Like it's not on Zillow, it's not on third party websites, it's not on your fellow agents' websites. What would you do? And I feel like it's crazy because like we didn't even realize that this was on the table. I think that we as agents took syndication for granted, and this is exactly what happened to Compass agents in Seattle, the Northwest MLS. They took the rights of the Compass's IDX feeds in their MLS. They took them away, then reinstated them pretty quickly. But it's like when that happened, then you sit back and you realize, wait a minute, um, this is a real thing. Like this can happen. And so now the fate of where our listings go is really kind of a mystery at this point. Like what's going to be the end of this saga, this portal wars? So let me go back for a second. This all kind of started like I guess about a year and a half ago. There was some uproar about CCP, clear cooperation policy, how the rule that was instated in 19 by NAR that said, anything publicly, advertised listing wise has to be put in MLS within 24 hours, which of course gets syndicated to all the big platforms. Let me make that a little bigger. And so at the end of March, okay, recently, NAR announced it would not be ending its clear cooperation policy because, of course, a Supreme Court found that it wasn't in violation of any antitrust laws. And so, of course, the CCP requires listing brokers to submit listings and blah blah blah. Okay, so they said they weren't going to end it, but this is what they did. They said that they would create a new mandatory policy, list multiple listing options for sellers, which continues to require listing submission in MLS, but offers delayed marketing exempt listings category that allows listing brokers to keep listings off MLS subscribers, IDX feeds, and such as Realtor.com and stuff. But the listing brokers would not be able to keep such listings off MLS subscribers VOW, such as Zillow, Redfin. And so when NAR came out with that at the end of March, okay, this was at the end of March, Zillow comes back on April 10th and created this policy of theirs. And it says if a listing is online, right, advertised anywhere publicly, if it's online, period, it should be online everywhere. This is Zillow's new listing access standards. And so after all this happened, then you have Mr. Robert, and he says this: Zillow banning homeowners who don't give them their publicly give them their publicly marketed listings. Okay, let me say it again. Zillow banning homeowners who don't give them their publicly marketed listings is like Google saying if you advertise anywhere, you must advertise on Google. And if we see you advertise anywhere else, even social media, newsletter, postcard, for more than one day, and you haven't advertised on Google, then I'm going to ban you from ever being on Google. This is Zillow. Is Zillow really protecting the buyer and seller, or is Zillow protecting the MLS and its free listing supply chain? Like, this guy's a wild man. Compass has achieved everything it has without banning homeowners who don't give us their listings. Why can't Zillow and Redfin do the same thing? He basically said the same thing here. Compass has achieved everything without forcing homeowners to do anything. Why can't NAR and MLSs do the same thing? And so then shortly after Zillow came out with this policy, about a week later, Mr. Samuelson from Zillow came out with this blog. Make no mistake, we're championing transparency at Zillow, where he goes on to say that he believes that every buyer should have access to every listing that's out there. Starting to, agree with having these private listings is going to uneven the playing field. And and so he went on, and he talked about the different ways that listings are subject to not being, it can stay a private listing, basically. So he has a list of those here, which includes like for sale by owners, true private listings in MLS for sellers who need privacy, office exclusives. You can keep properties, off market and offer them just to the other agents in your brokerage. That's always been a thing. Coming soon, delayed marketing listings, rental listings, new construction listed by sold by the builder. But what isn't okay is publicly listings is listings publicly marketed to some buyers but hidden from others. That's where they're going to draw the line. And so some people say, well, Zillow's doing all this because they want to keep everything on their platform, so they have ulterior motive. Some people say, well, Compass has ulterior motive because, you know, they have their own private listing portal, so they want everything to be there, so they can double in deals and recruit more agents. This blog post that was on LinkedIn, it had 379 comments, and it was a lot of the comments where the CEOs, like the pillars of the industry. This article here kind of summed up some of the comments. So Robert from Compass came in. You know, he said Zillow is abusing its market power. This is bully behavior and is abuse of monopoly power coordinated by the largest trade organization in the United States and the largest real estate portal in the United States. Basically saying that NAR and Zillow were working together. Leo from EXP came in and said, Robert, I completely believe in seller's choice, but that includes telling the actual truth, not steering everyone into a self-serving scheme for recruiting and double-ending transactions under the banner of seller choice. He also argued drive to exclusive properties from the open market is a guaranteed recipe for a fair housing nightmare. And NAREP did a really lengthy article here about that the real estate market is on the cusp of the worst a fair housing crisis since the 60s. Basically just echoing the side that, you know, every listing should be available to every buyer, and if not, then it's not fair housing. Zillow has announced a policy. It is no longer to list properties from brokers' private listings if those properties are being publicly marketed, aiming to curb the practice of withholding listings from the broad market exposure. eXp Realty has not wavered in its full support of the clear cooperation policy. They actually created forms which actually disclose the fact that, yeah, you can go off market if you want to, Mr. Seller, but you're not going to get exposure. You're more than likely going to sell it for cheaper, and it's going to take longer to sell. Redfin has also taken the stance on the side with Zillow and EXP and NAREP concerning this. And so, but this was funny because you saw Glenn Sanford, you know, from EXP, James Dwiggins, who I have with us here today to get his thoughts on what's happening. Bess Friedman. It was like, and it was, I gotta say, and James can hear me, but it was so funny reading through the comments because it was kind of like when you see people on social media, like haters going back and forth and kind of, you know, poking at each other and trying to play off words. That's what it was, but it was actual CEOs of publicly traded and huge real estate companies and portals. It was kind of almost entertaining, but I believe that this is something that we need to pay attention to as an industry, as a real estate agent. Like at the end of the day, your success and failure is not going to depend on what plays out here. Your success and failure is going to depend on your skill level to communicate with people and help them buy and sell property. You know, whatever happens here, in my opinion, is not going to dictate the number of sales that happen. The number of buyers who want to buy throughout the year are still going to buy. It just may end up being a different way of searching for properties. They may not have access to all the properties available, depending on how this thing plays out. So that's kind of where we are to get you guys up to date. And one of the funniest things in here was what James said. Let's see, where is it? He said, James Dwiggins, the CEO of Nexthome, wrote, "Wow, Compass agents are drinking the Kool-Aid. The entire industry knows this charade already, and we're not dumb. So please stop offering us your Kool-Aid." So here joining us is Mr. James Dwiggins himself. James.
How are you, Ricky?
Good, man. How you doing?
You know, I'm in another hotel room delivering a keynote later today, but I'm good. So I'm good. It was a great intro, by the way.
Life of a rock star, man.
I just realized I should be drinking Kool-Aid right now while I'm doing this podcast with you. It'd have been more funny if I actually held it up. So
That's good stuff, man. So I guess my question is, like, who's right and who's wrong? Because on one side, you have people saying, well, Zillow is just out for, their agenda. And on the other side, the private portals, everybody that's on this side says, well, the private portal people are just, they have an agenda. And it seems like both sides have an agenda to a certain degree. What say you?
Well, let me start with this. Everybody has an agenda and everything because that's just how people are. But I think what's unfortunate in this entire debate is we've lost sight of our customer. And it's become this, we've used, like everything in politics or America today, we use very fringe cases to create an entire debate and conversation about something that's incredibly rare. So we've got, on one side of the camp, we've got the system that we've built in the United States to share listing information out to the broader public. We've spent 40 years building it. Talk a little bit about that because I think most of your viewers respectfully haven't been around long enough to know the history of where this came from, whereas my family's third generation. My grandfather started his company in 1967. So I'll talk about a little bit about that because I think it's important to have historical perspective. And then, you've got this other camp of seller choice and seller privacy. And so you've really got sort of two worlds of, we've got to give sellers the ability to make choices, which I agree with. And I've stated publicly. In fact, I was the first person to write an op-ed on a solution to this problem, which everybody conveniently forgets. But there's also this idea of privacy. And there's not that there isn't choice already available to consumers. And I'll go through some of those things. Just actually agents don't offer consumers these choices. But the biggest thing you have to talk about, Ricky, I think is this. What agents don't understand, because most haven't been here long enough, and I am third generation. Both my grandparents were brokers and had a company they started in 1967. Both my parents were real estate brokers whose company I work for. So I've literally been in this business my entire life from day one. And we have the greatest marketplace that has ever been built anywhere in the world. Period. The end. There's no discussion. There's no debate on it. It doesn't matter what you think. It has its flaws, but it is better than every single country on planet Earth. If you go to the International MLS Forum, you will find that every year, countries around the world are trying to figure out how to build a system where we have a repository of data that is normalized, that we can all work from to do our comps, to have historical information that we benefit from in this industry, where the rest of the world does not. In Australia, most real estate deals do not have buyer representation. They are done via auction. If you ask a real estate agent over in Australia what they think of our system, I've just read an article yesterday about how they're like, our industry is stupid to even think about dismantling the very system we've spent 40 years building. In Spain or France or others, you have to go to every real estate company website possible to figure out what is for sale. And that is how it was 40 years ago when my grandfather built his company. So I'm going to give you the historical perspective. This is an incredibly important conversation. My grandfather benefited from a system that many in the industry are trying to take it back to today. And I'm not ashamed to say this because my family also was part of fixing it. The way the industry operated back in the 60s, 70s, before the MLS system came online with a system called Boris, I'm going to go really historical here, was there was an MLS book, and the book was printed once a month. But there were very, very large companies and very few independent brokers because, like my grandfather would tell you, it was all about controlling inventory. Whoever had the inventory was able to recruit agents because what would happen is they would hold the inventory, they would try to sell it internally first so they could double end the deal to get both sides of the commission. And only after they couldn't sell it internally would they cooperate with other companies and put it in the MLS book, which was printed once per month. So every 30 days, you'd have to call and ask, see what was for sale, drive around a neighborhood, find a yard sign. There was no internet. That is the system that it was. That's what we started with, was that system. And it was awful for brokerages, for sellers, for buyers. It sucked. It was not good. And so the industry came together to build one repository called a multiple listing service that was first a book and then it became digital. So every agent could log in, see what was for sale, have buyers know what was for sale, and sellers could benefit from exposing their property to all agents representing a potential buyer in a market. That is the system we have built today. The system that we're now fighting with again out of sheer greed and profit is the only reason this is a topic. This idea of a three-phased marketing plan as innovation, there's nothing new about this. This is literally what my grandfather did in 1967. If he was alive today, I'd have to try to find the marketing material, but that was exactly what it was. Office exclusives was, we have the largest agent base. Work with us. We'll try to sell it internally. We'll get less people going through your property. Like, it's the same pitch. There's nothing innovative about this entire subject. Zero. This is all about trying to create opportunities, which is why one of my colleagues who's very vocal on this is creating incentives now for agents to keep them off MLS and try to sell internally. And the reason this is a topic today is because there are 4 million people who are selling homes in the United States. We average 5.3 million in this country. There is only a small number of people that are doing it. You can only squeeze so much juice from that orange. And we're trying to figure out now how to double end deals. And it's become this whole thing. The problem here is this, and this is where I don't care what anybody's opinions are. If you've been through the litigation like I have, where my company was sued along with everybody else in the $2 billion club, we got sued for what everybody knows was completely made up lawsuit that had nothing to do based in reality. But because of the legal system in this country, you can sue for anything that you want, and you will pay massive amounts of money to lawyers to defend it. And here's the thing, settlement is always cheaper than going to trial. And I want to be very clear about what's going to happen here. You can see the writing on the wall because I've already seen sellers making comments about how they realize they could have made more money by putting it on the open market. Simple logic tells you if you have a exclusive listing that has 2 buyers and you didn't put it on the open market where you could have had 50 potential buyers, like simple supply and demand economics would make sense that you probably didn't get the best price.
Well, here's the story of the day here. From your Facebook, and you can maybe speak on this, but what happened here?
So a seller wanted to have a home sold at a price that the agents said, well, we don't know if that price is achievable. Why don't we keep it off market? We'll test the market internally within our brokerage to see what other agents think. So here's the script, right? And then she managed to get an offer at the price that she wanted. There were 2 people that were interested. One wrote an offer at the price that she wanted. Well, deal fell out. Buyer herself got concerned, like, well, maybe we're paid too much, etc. So she decided not to do the office exclusive anymore and told the agent to put it on the MLS, where within 6 days, she had an offer $100,000 above the price that she wanted. And in her mind, well, if we open up to the general market, if only 2 people looked at it and wrote an offer at the price I wanted, let's open it up to the entire world and see what happens. And her post is about how she would have lost $100,000 had she kept it off MLS. By the way, Ricky, since this has been posted, I've had multiple sellers reach out to me with similar stories. And I'm going to tell you right now what's going to happen here. The lawyers are going to see this. They're going to go, wow, here's a practice that benefits the brokerage, because they're going to use the following line, and they're going to sue the crap out of the agents and the brokerage too. They're going to go, oh, so off MLS, these deals, how many of them were sold to an agent representing the buyer in the same brokerage? And it's going to be, I don't know, probably 100% of the time, because it's an office exclusive. So they're going to go, okay, the brokerage benefited. They got financial gain from doing this. They got market share and they got commission on both sides of the transaction. Okay, well, there's your monetary value, right? They're going to look at the price of the property versus other comps on what it could potentially sell for. There's your damages portion. And then they're going to wait for a class to get big enough, and they're going to sue the shit out of everybody for doing this practice. And by the way, agents listening, they're not going to sue just the brokerages this time, because the brokerages are all broke. That's why there's the word broke in brokerage. They're going to sue you, because you keep a lion's share of the commission, and you are putting yourself in massive harm's way right now because you don't realize what you are setting yourself up for. This, by the way, have been confirmed by 4 different class action lawyers I've spoken to, who literally say, do not do that practice. You are asking for massive issues. That's a very winnable case to show. It's going to be easier for them to sue you. You're going to settle because it's cheaper than trial. And let's not even refer to the fact that there's potentially a buy-side claim. Buyers are not being able to see properties. They're going to claim fair housing issues. I didn't know about these properties. I wrote an offer. I never heard back. Or how about the fact that one of these companies is claiming that they're selling their listings for 2% more than market? I don't know.
Right.
That sounds like a great idea to say publicly. So now you're actually representing the buyer knowingly that they're overpaying for the property?
Ooh.
What?
Wow. Yeah.
No one's having that debate.
Yeah, keep it off market. Let's do private. We'll get more money for it. Yeah. And then the buyers end up having a suit. So what do you I guess obviously we can see where you stand on this issue.
Well, but it's not, but here's the thing, right? I'm not against seller choice as long as it is clear, informed consent without steering. Right now, the disclosures I'm seeing by companies doing this, I've literally forwarded this to my law firm and they're like, wow, that's exhibit A for steering. It doesn't talk about the risks of dual agency. It doesn't talk about the fact that properties off MLS take longer to sell. By every MLS study possible shows they take up to 2 weeks longer to sell. It's not, when it says it's not viewable on public portals, or public sites, I believe the language, Ricky. When you hear as a seller, hear the word, it's not put on public sites. Is that descriptive enough? Or should it be, it's not being posted on Zillow and Realtor and Homes and Trulia, which by the way is the websites that they know and understand. So if we're going to do informed consent, which I'm not fully against, but if we're going to do informed consent, yeah, this is an example of an awful disclosure. Okay.
So this is the disclosure that they give their sellers as they go.
It's a pitch. Read it. It's literally a pitch for how to do a 3-phased marketing plan. There's nothing that discloses the issues. I'll go a step further because a regulator I spoke to said, if agents are being incentivized to do office exclusives, that must be in the disclosure as well, because that is a thing of value, even if it's $100. You shouldn't, agents know fiduciary. Shouldn't you be disclosing if you have a financial benefit to push something? Right. The answer is only yes. There's only one answer to that question. And so if we're going to do this and we want to give sellers choice, which again, I'm okay with, there needs to be very strong safeguards for how we do not put sellers in a position where they did not understand their decision, this is Leo's form at EXP. This is much better and limits risk. Literally talks about the buyer exposure, no public portals, time on market, the risks that are involved. And if the seller so chooses to do that, then you've got enough CYA there to really make that happen where they're making that choice. But that's not the debate we're having is about seller choice. It's not seller choice when they trust you. We all know, and I'll give you this stat, 90% of consumers, according to a Deloitte study that I just read, do not read any single terms and conditions of any legal document that they sign. 90%. Like, Ricky, when was the last time that you actually read a document online that you clicked I agree to? You don't.
None. Nope.
You don't. So they follow the advice of the agent, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to be honest and truthful and put their interests above our own. That's literally the definition of fiduciary, and we're not. And that's why I have an issue with this whole thing. So
yeah. I guess so where is the argument that they have,
it's seller choice.
What's that?
It's seller choice. They believe that the MLS rules are restricting the seller's ability to do that.
What seller doesn't want maximum exposure, I guess is what
Elton
what
John.
kind of merit do they actually have behind this is a seller choice debate?
It's become a conversation because it's being pushed to sellers and sold to sellers as a marketing pitch.
Okay.
If you ask the seller the question, you've been selling real estate forever, Ricky. How many of your sellers came to you, not by you prompting, but came to you and said, I don't want my home on the MLS?
None. I mean,
None.
For sale by owners, but like as far as me listing a property, none.
Right. So my company's done 110,000 transactions in 9 years, 8 years, whatever the number is. You know how many times as the CEO of the business, I've gotten a complaint from a seller pissed off that their agent put their home on the open market?
I would
Zero.
guess. I
I've
would guess
gotten
none.
zero. I've got tons of complaints about other things. The agents suck. They didn't follow everything possible, but I've never had a seller being like, oh my God, my agent put my home on Zillow, my home on Realtor. It doesn't happen. It's become a thing because it's about profit. And agents are literally following this track straight off a cliff for litigation that is, the lawyers are salivating over this right now. They're going, oh man, this industry is so stupid. Let them continue so we can go get another yacht like Michael Ketchmark walked away with. So I don't know what to tell you. This is literally what he did. I mean, so what do you want me to say, right? $333 million he made. So, we're literally setting ourselves up again for it. But what I'm sad about as a leader in this industry, as somebody who oversees operations for a business with 6,000 agents who are just waking up every day trying to help consumers, is there is leadership that are taking their people straight into a fire. And they do not understand what is happening here and the bigger game that is being played and the risk of litigation that will occur if this continues. And when I say if it continues, the lawyers are waiting for a big enough class. Class action means you got to have enough plaintiffs in the class to make it worthwhile for them to do it. So what they're wanting is everybody to do this so they can go sue everybody with the process. So you won't see litigation right now. You'll see litigation in a year when they're like, all right, we've got 100,000 homeowners that we can now put into the class. There's enough money there for it to make sense for us to sue. Now let's go after everybody and get them to pay out the fees. That's what's being played.
And then when you think about the potential lawsuits from the other angle of sellers who, they're like, maybe there's from the other side, they're like, well, there could also be a lawsuit with the sellers who didn't want. There's no damages there. There's no meat on the bone. There's nothing to really. So really, going this direction is really the only risk when it comes to a class action lawsuit. Not if we kept things the way that they are. Correct.
The seller has choice today. So let me be very clear about this. The problem is the agents aren't offering it because no one's been trained on it. You can do an exclusive listing agreement, which means that you have to, when you put it in the MLS, follow MLS rules. I want to be very clear about this. And under those rules, under CCP, if you're going to publicly market a property, not internally, publicly, this is the issue that where Zillow's coming from, as I want to talk about this. When companies are not following the CCP rules, which they're not, office exclusives means you can keep it off MLS and market it internally. That is it. No yard signs, no emails, no social media posts, nothing on your website behind a login. There are companies that aren't listening to those rules, which is where this is coming from. So they want to use the MLS when it benefits them, and then they want to keep stuff off and try to do things that aren't following the rules when it benefits them too, which is where Zillow stepped in. We'll come to that in just a second. If you want to do an open listing, and just like open listing, I don't know what that is. An open listing agreement,
like they can hire multiple agents, basically.
Correct, but you can also enter into a contract with the seller, for example, where it's an open listing, but they have to pay you for all the marketing that you're going to spend. There's tons of ways to do that, but under an open listing agreement, non-exclusive, you can do whatever you want. You don't have to follow CCP. You don't have to put that. You can do whatever you want with that property. Is completely exempt from CCP rules.
Now, why is that? Why is an open listing? Because people are going to ask me this. Why is an open listing exempt from CCP?
Because it's not exclusively represented by one person. In a co-op, you're agreeing to exclusively list it and share all this information with competitors. Then you have to follow those certain rules. If it's an open listing, there isn't an exclusive arrangement. There's nothing that requires the MLS to have you put it in there. So you don't have anything that is a risk at that standpoint. And agents are like, well, I don't want to do that. And I go, I get it. You may not want to do that. But keep in mind, this is an option for sellers. The problem is we're not offering it to sellers. We also can do office exclusives. I'm not saying don't do them. I'm not a fan of them. I don't think there's any benefit to it because you're excluding the amount of market. But if you play by the rules, which is internal communication only, then you have every right to do that. You can't get to have your cake and eat it too, where it's like, well, I get to do an office exclusive, but I also get to publicly market it, which is what Zillow stepped in to do. They're saying, yeah, and by the way, yeah, James, you know, it's for their benefit. Yeah, I get it. Like, I'm not dumb. I realize that their inventory and listings on their site means more lead gen. I get it. I understand the business model. And they also are understanding that if this game continues to get played, here's the scary part, Ricky. So this is where we'll get down into some really details that no one's thinking about, okay? If it continues on the road that it's going, because I run a big company, most of my friends run most of the big real estate companies, as you know, like we travel in sort of that circle. Do you really think every other real estate brokerage isn't going to create a private listing network too?
Right. Or well, they already have. I saw Douglas Elliman and Corcoran.
Right. Because their competitor was doing it. And so here's the interesting part, right? So now I'm going to tell you how this game was going to play out. By the way, you all should be thanking Zillow for what they did. So this is how the game was going to go. And by the way, this isn't theory. This is conversations I was having, like with large companies. I won't name who, but let's put it this way. Franchisors currently today, so think Remax and Keller Williams and Anywhere and you know, Berkshire Hathaway has a franchise division and Exit Realty. All of these companies are franchisors. They actually are excluded from CCP. CCP rules means that you can keep a private listing, you can make it private, but it's only within the brokerage. It doesn't cross. It doesn't cross brands and it doesn't cross independently owned and operated businesses. Now, if you've got a couple of big brokerages that are going to go down this road of private listing networks, EXP, massive company, right? Compass, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services Division, these companies all create private listing networks. Do you really think franchisors are going to care what NAR's rules are on CCP? Really? They're going to go, okay.
They don't care what Zillow, like, I don't think Compass cares that Zillow said, oh, you can't, we're not going to put your property here. That's what they want. They want it only to be on their platform.
I get it, but I'll talk about that in a second, but this is an important point. The franchisors aren't going to listen to CCP rules. So Anywhere is the largest franchisor in the United States. So it's Berkshire Hathaway, I'm sorry, it's Better Homes and Gardens, it's Corcoran, it's Sotheby's, it's ERA, Coldwell Banker and Century 21. I think I missed one, but you can see how big it is, right? 200,000 agents represented by that brand. If they create a private listing network where they no longer share their inventory in your market, imagine the game that gets played here. So Keller Williams with 140,000 agents comes online next. Remax with roughly 60,000 agents does the same thing. Now you've got these companies where essentially 1/3 of all realtors work between 3 individual brands who no longer share their inventory with you. And that inventory is no longer on the MLS. And so now we're in this game where these big companies are pulling all their inventory. And I always ask this question in audiences of agents. I said, imagine logging into the multiple listing service and all of a sudden 40 to 50% of the inventory is no longer there. How do you do your comps? How do you do it when the inventory sells off MLS? How do you compete when your buyer says the listing that I want to look at is listed with Remax or they don't even know is it Remax, but Remax won't show it unless you're working with a Remax agent.
Yeah. So then you get into trouble becomes with, buyer agency agreements.
You bet, right? And so this game would go like this. So here's how this all ended out. We did the math on this. A bunch of friends of mine and I went and looked at it. If a company had less than 10% market share in the MLS, they're gone. They're out. Because what happens is the agents that are part of that company don't have access to inventory. So they will leave and go to a company that does. Buyers won't work with you because you don't have access to inventory. So the point is everybody under 10% market share in your local MLS, gone. They don't exist anymore.
The agents will
rolls all up. You bet, right? Yep. So it rolls up into roughly 15 companies minus rural America, like local companies. 15 companies dominate the entire market, and it happens within 36 months. Everybody gets rolled up. You then have they go, well, we're not going to play by the same rules and we don't care about MLSs. So MLSs just go away and they create some version of their own, but it's fragmented. And then the association goes away and the list goes on and on. And by the way, that was about to happen. And why everybody should be thanking Zillow was because, to your comment, they stopped it. And while people think that they haven't, they have. Because here's what's happened. Redfin and Zillow both said, if you're going to do an office exclusive, and you're going to publicly market it where it's not available to everybody, essentially not follow the rules that are in place, we will no longer have your listing on our website. That becomes a required disclosure item now. You have to actually put that in your document that tells a seller, if we do a private exclusive and we market it publicly, there's a risk that your property could be banned on Zillow and Trulia and Redfin. Now, I don't know many sellers who are going to be okay with the idea of not having their listing on Zillow and Redfin and Trulia, considering Zillow's website traffic is 1.4 billion unique visitors a year. And Ricky, this is an important number. Realtor.com, half that. Homes.com, 2/3 of Realtor. And you could take every single real estate brokerage and franchisor in the United States, every single one of them, and combine all of their traffic, and they won't even get close to Homes.com's numbers.
Right.
Not even close. So I don't know how you have that conversation with a seller saying, well, potentially the listing could be banned permanently, and the only way to get it back up on Zillow is by relisting with another brokerage, because that's a fun conversation to have. So not to mention the fact that the traffic on those websites, as much as we hate it, it is what it is. There's no money that anybody has access to even get close to what these guys, except for Rocket. But beyond them, this is the world we live in. And so, in my opinion, Zillow's move was a checkmate, because I don't know how you tell a seller either not disclose it, which is a huge risk, and then if they get banned, you got to explain why. And then you've got to contract with them, you got to let them out of, so that they can get their property back up there. I mean, this is a big move by Zillow. It was a big move by Zillow.
Yeah, it was. But it was a move they had to make because of their business model.
Well, so here's the other argument, which is ironic. If you were to study real estate portals outside of the United States, so people are like, Zillow did it, it makes sense for their business model. And you're correct. But they also did it because they're protecting the consumer. And I know those people over there really well, by the way. I have close friendships with the leadership team. I don't agree with them on a lot of things, but this is one of those scenarios where we do agree. Ironically, outside the United States, because again, most agents don't know this, real estate portals are like CoStar here. And I'm sure you're familiar with CoStar. I'm not referring to homes, I'm referring to CoStar in the commercial space. They are a monopoly. You pay a massive amount of money to put your listings up on the website. Today, we actually benefit from, we don't have to pay anything to put our listings on those websites.
Right.
And so the ironic part is Zillow would actually make more money had they actually gone down the road of the way real estate portals operate around the rest of the world. And so there is this protecting their business model, but to some degree, it actually would benefit them to have the world move in a different direction. But we can debate that later. The point is, they made a move to protect sellers. They made a move to protect buyers. They made a move for their business, the same as everybody else is trying to pivot for their business too. But I do think their move was a smart move for protecting the industry. And I think what most people don't understand here is that if you lay all this out like I just did, they just stopped a lot of litigation from occurring that I don't even think agents realized what they were walking into.
Well, I said a long time ago, probably 2 years ago, that if Zillow did go to a pay-to-play, that they would make way more money if they did that.
They would.
No doubt. So you believe, just to clarify, you believe that this Zillow move saved the current landscape? Like you believe that because of what they did, that we will stay in this state that we're in now, where CCP exists? Off-market listings will only be marketed within the brokerage, not publicly, etc. You don't think that?
I believe that's the direction. I think their move certainly stopped mass consolidation of the industry. That I'm 100% convinced of, because the conversations I was having was people were like, well, I guess this is the world that we're in, so let's go put a private listing network online.
Right.
And the amount of choice agents have to work at lots of different companies with lots of different models, the freedom to open your own brokerage, all that would be gone.
I feel like the people on the other side aren't going to quit fighting for the right to have their private portals and to do it the way that they're proposing.
Sure.
So they're going to keep fighting for that. What would have to happen for that to become, and I don't even know what the word is, legal, ethical, like what common practice, what would have to happen for
It
us
won't.
to do away with clear cooperation, or change the way that we do business and create the scenario where you have to go to different brokerages, portals to see everything for sale?
I personally think this game is over. And the reason I say that is this. So I was at the Arello conference last week doing a keynote for the state regulators. So was my constituent on the other side of this debate. Very differing views on this. And I can tell you the state regulators aren't buying it. They are absolutely looking at this practice of office exclusives as something that benefits the brokerage. They believe fiduciary means that you need to provide options. You cannot steer them into options. A lot of the regulators I spoke to in the hallway think that this shouldn't even be offered unless a seller asks for privacy, that it should be an option you provide when somebody asks you, but that it's very clear that the open market is the best possible scenario for a seller and also for home buyers. There are massive concerns from the regulators about fair housing issues. You've got literally every consumer advocacy group at this point is on my side of this. CPC came out scathing report about office exclusives, saying Zillow's move was the right move. They even asked for the Department of Justice to investigate these office exclusives, which, to be clear, I believe you will see happen. I think you will see the DOJ jump in going, this is a practice that's harming people. And all it's going to take, by the way, Ricky, is that, and every agent better back off instantly, because if you want to be investigated by the federal government and the full weight of an institution with unlimited resources, have fun with that. And I do think state regulators will step in. From my conversations last week with many of the state regulators, who, by the way, issue your license and can revoke your license, they are 100% looking at this. And what will happen is they're gonna walk in with a badge and they're gonna open an investigation in a brokerage. They're gonna ask for all your marketing material, all your files, your communications, and they have a legal right to do all of that. And if they feel that you are violating fiduciary for fiduciary states, it is up to the regulators to decide whether you keep your license or not. And so there is very serious things coming this way, because it's very clear that it's not about seller choice right now, that there's a significant amount of steering going on into a certain direction. If we want to get to a place where there's seller choice and you are presenting information to a seller in a non-biased way that clearly lays these things out, that you're not being incentivized to do, and you have that conversation and the seller chooses that they want to do that, and you've covered it in a very ethical way, fine. But that's not what's happening. And we all know it. That's why 95% of the industry is like, stop with the Kool-Aid. We all know what's going on here. And so that's the thing that we're going to have a conversation about. And unfortunately, because this industry is what it is, and I've been in literally this industry my entire life, it always takes the lawyers to stop bad practices from occurring. I guess we just can't learn from our mistakes. I don't know. So,
well, James, I appreciate your passion behind this. I appreciate
I just don't want to see the industry go through more problems. We've already had enough of this the past 2 years. Like, I've been through litigation. I was paying $100,000 a month in legal fees to defend a frivolous claim. We settled because it was cheaper. My agents were disrupted. Did we not learn? Did we not learn in this process? And to me, this is so blatantly clear where this is going to go.
Yeah.
This claim is easier for them to prove than the one they already won.
Much easier. It's kind of like when back before clear cooperation. I mean, I remember before clear cooperation policy, we could list a property here and it had to be an MLS within 3 business days, and then clear cooperation.
Depending upon the MLS, but yeah.
What's that?
Depending upon the MLS, but yeah.
Right. In our local MLS, and I remember it was always a thing that agents would get upset with other agents for kind of holding it, to see if they could sell it themselves, and they were trying to see if one of their buyers might want to buy it. And I feel like everybody looked at that as dirty practice. And now I believe it's exactly what these big corporations are doing now. They're literally doing exactly that. They're just trying to keep it to try to sell it on their own before they expose it to everyone else. And I kind of see it as a dirty,
I'm gonna add
dirty
I'm gonna add
practice.
one thing. I know we got to wrap, but this is an important one. So, dual agency currently in the United States is banned in 9 states today. Single agent dual agency. Okay,
Yeah.
so there's a lot of states that are looking at this now, going,
Okay.
this is a so like you can't hire the same lawyer to represent
Right.
both sides of a deal. You can't even
Yep.
hire two lawyers in the same law firm, to be clear.
Mhm.
Um, and so you're going to see this issue. But here's my point I wanted to make. I talked to one of the largest insurance carriers in the US, off the record. I can't claim on who, because they gave me data that it's not supposed to be really like out there. They showed me data that showed that dual agency claims are usually 17 and 24% higher in the amounts. And the words from them were, if dual agency becomes a bigger risk for us, we will either jack up the rates in order to provide that coverage to the brokerage and or agent, or we will no longer provide carrier coverage for brokerages that are doing dual agency.
Uh-huh.
As in, you just won't get it. And
Right.
so I don't know, as an agent, I would be
Just to be
really
clear,
concerned.
dual agency could just mean the same two agents in the same brokerage, right?
Correct.
Right. So I mean,
Correct.
like exactly what they're talking about.
Correct.
What do you think we got to do to get Robert in here to have a conversation with us?
I don't know. You'll have to get him. He won't come on the show with me or do anything together with me. So you'll have to get him
He
independently.
declined. You asked him.
We don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, and so we unfortunately, I would love to have a conversation with him. I'd love to have a public debate with him about it, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, he's declined so far. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe I can see what I can do to make something happen. You never
I'm
know.
happy to join. Look, I'm
Cool.
passionate about it, but it's because I care about this industry. I care about the consumer. I believe in consumer choice as long as it's very, very clearly outlined and there isn't steering or violation of fiduciary duty going on. So
Yeah. Well, again, man, appreciate everything you're doing. I know you're out there beating the streets, doing keynotes, trying to spread the good word and do everything you can do to help the industry stay on the positive side of all this
thanks.
stuff. So, on behalf of myself and everybody else, we really appreciate you and thanks for coming
Thank
on,
you.
spending some time with
Appreciate
us.
you having me.
Yeah,
Of course.
absolutely. Have a good day.
You too.
Talk to you soon, brother.
See ya.